Imagine, just for a moment, that you belong to an institution that has existed for 1,000 years, one that has endured world wars, internal uprisings, and even the fall of entire empires. In that world, your name isn't just personal, it's a formal title, a legal identity carrying centuries of history, authority, and immense global influence. For the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, those titles have effectively become the backbone of a billion-dollar media presence in the United States. Ow. But what happens when the very institution that grants that power begins to pull back the curtain? Recently, the discussion around Harry and Meghan has moved beyond simple family disputes into something far more significant. This is no longer just about emotions or who upset whom. It's about the credibility of the royal line of succession itself. Reports suggest that senior advisors at Buckingham Palace have quietly initiated a high-stakes verification process focusing on the most sensitive element of the Sussex legacy: their children. From missing medical confirmations to altered birth records and unclear christening documentation, the official trail linking these children to the British throne is reportedly becoming increasingly fragile. So is this merely a clash between royal tradition and modern privacy? Or are we seeing the early signs of a controversy that could potentially erase the Sussex titles from history? To understand that, we need to move beyond polished Netflix productions and examine the rigid realities of royal protocol. In Montecito, a title isn't just symbolic, it functions as global currency. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020, they assured the public they wouldn't use their royal status for commercial purposes. Yet since then, the Sussex identity has become central to nearly every major business venture they've undertaken. Whether it's lifestyle branding, multi-year streaming agreements, or major book releases, the Duke and Duchess titles consistently take center stage. Piers Morgan has been one of the most vocal critics of this dynamic, calling it outright hypocrisy. He argues that while the couple frequently criticize the monarchy, portraying the UK in extremely negative terms, they continue to rely on the very titles granted by that same institution. According to Morgan, if the monarchy is truly as problematic as they claim, the principled move would be to relinquish those titles and live entirely as private individuals. But in the world of high-level branding, there's a clear distinction. Harry and Meghan may represent celebrity status, but the Duke and Duchess of Sussex carries global authority and influence. Now, that branding is extending to their children as well. By using titles like Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, the couple has effectively tied their children's identities to the same institution they've spent years criticizing. This is where things become more complex. From the perspective of the British monarchy, a title isn't something you permanently own. It's granted by the sovereign and remains conditional upon adherence to constitutional rules. In London, speculation has been intensifying, with Morgan repeatedly raising a pointed question. How can someone be both in and out at the same time? He highlights ventures like American Riviera Orchard and other commercial projects as evidence that the Sussex brand is, in effect, monetizing the monarchy. And this pressure isn't coming from media voices alone. Reports indicate that insiders within the palace may quietly agree with parts of this criticism. What began as a single outspoken opinion is now evolving into a broader international debate. Across the United States, networks such as News Nation have started raising similar concerns, questioning why the royal family continues to allow this kind of branding without intervention. Attention is now shifting toward the official records of Archie and Lilibet, because that's where a potential constitutional vulnerability exists. If it can be shown that proper birth protocols weren't followed or that documentation is inconsistent, it could provide the Crown with the legal basis to act. Notably, this isn't being approached as a public controversy. Instead, it's unfolding with careful, calculated precision behind closed doors. And the starting point of the scrutiny is a 2019 birth certificate that has long raised questions. In most families, a birth certificate is a private matter. But for someone in the line of succession, it becomes a public document that must meet strict standards. When Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was born in May 2019, the original record listed his mother as Rachel Meghan Markle, standard legal procedure. However, weeks later, an unusual change was made. Her first and last names were removed and replaced with her royal title, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. This kind of alteration was highly uncommon, even within royal documentation. A mother's legal name is typically preserved. Once news of this edit surfaced, the blame game began almost immediately. Meghan's team reportedly argued that the palace had asked for the change to keep things consistent with other royal documents. But insiders pushed back, saying the request actually came from the Sussex side. That missing clarity, no solid paper trail, is exactly what's drawing attention in 2026. It raises a simple but uncomfortable question. Why go so far as to remove your legal name from your own child's birth record? In a system built on precision and documentation, that kind of branding adjustment has become a major point of debate. To critics, it signals that the emphasis was placed on the title from the very beginning rather than the individual. And that opens the door to an even larger issue, one that has fueled speculation for years: the mystery surrounding the medical signatures. In the UK, the birth of a royal child follows a tradition that stretches back centuries. A formal notice is displayed outside Buckingham Palace, not just as a celebration, but as a form of legal confirmation. For the births of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, these notices included signatures from the senior doctors involved in the delivery. Those signatures are not ceremonial. They serve as official verification that the child was born of the body of the royal mother, a strict constitutional requirement for succession. But when Archie was born, that process appeared to change. The announcement displayed at the palace reportedly lacked the doctor's signatures altogether. This was a significant departure from established protocol. While mainstream coverage at the time didn't focus heavily on it, royal observers immediately noticed. The timeline only added to the confusion. The palace announced Meghan had gone into labor hours after reports suggested Archie had already been born. There were no confirmed hospital details, no direct medical statements, and no independent verification. That absence of transparency has only intensified scrutiny. Critics argue that privacy was used as a way to sidestep long-standing rules meant to safeguard the legitimacy of the royal line. If the ongoing palace review determines that the lack of medical verification undermines constitutional requirements, then Archie's standing within the system. If Archie's situation raises concerns, Lilibet's case stands even further outside the norm. Born in California in 2021, her arrival took place completely beyond the jurisdiction of the British system. There were no royal physicians present, no UK-based medical oversight, and no traditional palace announcements. For a working royal household, this would have been an unprecedented break from protocol. For a couple living independently in the United States, it falls within their rights, but those rights come with constitutional implications. According to reports, the palace has no formal documentation of Lilibet's birth beyond what was released through Harry and Meghan's personal PR channels. For an institution that depends on verified lineage, having a child in the line of succession without official UK confirmation presents a serious issue. Adding to the uncertainty are claims that the doctor said to have delivered. Lilibet stepped away from her practice just 2 weeks after the birth. That detail has become a focal point for skeptics, raising questions about timing, transparency, and the absence of any formal medical statement. Within royal circles, This situation is sometimes described as a plausible deniability. The suggestion is that by avoiding firm, verifiable statements, the Sussexes may have protected themselves from potential legal complications later. Now, according to reports, the palace is carefully examining every available document piece by piece. There's also a religious dimension to consider. In the British monarchy, the sovereign is not only head of state, but also supreme governor of the Church of England. This makes a royal child's formal connection to the church almost as important as their bloodline. When Harry and Meghan announced Lilibet's christening in California, it was framed as a private, spiritual event. But constitutionally, it created uncertainty. Reports indicate that senior advisors have been unable to locate any official record of Lilibet's christening within the royal registry. There's no confirmed entry tied to a bishop, no acknowledgement from the Archbishop's office, and no documented link to the Church of England. Piers Morgan has been particularly direct on this point. Arguing that a royal christening is not merely symbolic, but a formal recognition by the state church. By choosing a private ceremony at an Episcopal church in California without traditional royal oversight, the Sussexes may have unintentionally separated Lilibet from one of the monarchy's formal requirements. If no official UK records exist, the palace could argue that the title of a princess is being used socially rather than constitutionally. And that distinction becomes crucial in any effort to streamline or redefine the monarchy's structure. To fully grasp the legal stakes involved, we need to go back to a key document from 1917, the letters patent issued by King George V. This document essentially sets the rules for who is entitled to be called a prince or princess, and it may hold the answers to what happens next. During the well-known interview with Oprah Winfrey, Meghan suggested that Archie had been denied a royal title because of his race, a statement that sent shockwaves globally and cast the palace as outdated and discriminatory. However, legal experts point out that the explanation is far more straightforward and far less dramatic. Under the 1917 rules, only the children of the sovereign and the grandchildren of the sovereign through the male line are automatically granted the titles of prince or princess. At the time of Archie's birth, he was a great-grandchild of the queen, meaning he simply wasn't eligible yet, not due to race, but because his grandfather Charles had not yet become king. The rule was applied exactly as it had been for generations. Piers Morgan has described this moment as all the lie heard around the world, arguing that the Sussexes turned a routine constitutional rule into a narrative of injustice. Now that King Charles is on the throne, those titles have technically been extended, but the tension created by that earlier claim hasn't faded. From the palace's perspective, there's a sense that the titles were forced into place under public pressure, and that has reportedly led to a quiet search for any legal grounds to revisit the situation. So, why is everything escalating now? According to reports, the palace isn't simply reacting to media chatter, it's addressing deeper internal concerns about the integrity of the royal lineage. Public scandals can be managed, but uncertainty in the line of succession is something the monarchy cannot afford. That's the kind of issue that can destabilize the entire institution. The ongoing verification review is said to be examining every detail from 2019 onward, looking into missing medical confirmations, hospital documentation, and even formal requests tied to name changes. Morgan argues that the palace wouldn't initiate such a detailed process without reason to believe that the official narrative may not fully align with reality. This isn't being framed as a personal attack on Harry and Meghan, but rather as a structural audit. The monarchy survives by protecting its foundations, and even the slightest doubt about birth protocols has to be addressed. especially with the future reign of Prince William and his heirs in mind. Behind palace doors, there are reportedly differing approaches on how to deal with the Sussex situation. King Charles III is said to have taken a more cautious and personal stance, prioritizing his role as a father and holding out hope for reconciliation. His strategy has leaned toward avoiding confrontation, allowing the titles to remain in place with the expectation that the couple might eventually step back into a quieter life. On the other hand, Prince William is believed to be taking a more pragmatic and long-term view. How good is that? As heir to the throne, his focus is on safeguarding the monarchy's future. From his perspective, the commercialization of royal titles presents a direct challenge to the institution's credibility. He's reportedly concerned about the precedent this sets, not just for now, but for the reign of his son, Prince George. Allowing exceptions could weaken the consistency that the monarchy relies on. Sources suggest William favors a firmer, more structured response, potentially redefining the Sussexes as private individuals. In his view, the monarchy cannot maintain relevance if it allows a hybrid model where individuals benefit from royal status while operating independently in commercial spaces. So what would it actually mean to remove or limit royal titles? It's far from simple. It involves a complex legal framework. 3 main approaches are reportedly being discussed. The first is often referred to as a quiet freeze, similar to what happened with Prince Andrew. The titles remain technically intact, but the individual is effectively removed from official royal functions. No public appearances, no formal recognition, and no use of age or age. It's essentially a social and institutional distancing. The second option is reclassification. This would involve King Charles issuing new letters patent, much like those established under King George V, to tighten the criteria for who qualifies as a prince or princess. For example, eligibility could be limited strictly to the children of the direct heir, Prince William. In that case, Archie and Lilibet would automatically lose their titles without the need for a public dispute. The third and most drastic option is formal removal. This would come into play if the verification process uncovers birth protocols. If the Crown determines that constitutional requirements were not met, it could revoke the titles entirely. Such a move would be unprecedented in modern times and would send shockwaves through the institution, but it would also decisively protect the monarchy's structural integrity. Morgan has hinted that even this nuclear option may now be under consideration. If that were to happen, it raises a major question. What becomes of the Sussex brand? Harry and Meghan have built much of their identity in the United States around their royal association. Without those titles, they would essentially become another high-profile celebrity couple in an already crowded space. The royal connection, the mystique and prestige tied to it, is a significant part of their appeal to companies like Netflix, Spotify, and major publishers. According to Morgan, the momentum behind the couple may already be slowing, with some partnerships ending and media coverage in the U.S. growing more critical. If the palace were to take formal steps to strip or limit their titles, it could trigger a profound identity shift, one that reshapes not just their public image, but the entire foundation of their brand. At that point, the brand shifts from global royalty to outspoken outsiders. And as Piers Morgan often points out, audiences are far more drawn to royalty than to exiled critics. The Sussexes' dependence on their titles is both their biggest advantage and their greatest risk. In many ways, they're building something on ground they don't fully control. While the palace continues reviewing documentation, Meghan Markle is reportedly moving forward with ambitions to establish herself as a lifestyle billionaire. From premium jams to upscale home products, she's crafting an image that mirrors a distinctly American take on royal sophistication. But critics argue that this direction clashes directly with the spirit of the Sandringham Summit, where it was agreed they wouldn't use their royal connections for financial gain. The challenge is obvious. How do you separate the two when the title Duchess of Sussex is central to the brand itself? It's arguably the very element that makes those products marketable. This tension between commerce and royalty is exactly why the palace is taking a closer look at the records. There's a growing question about whether this branding strategy was always part of the plan. Was the push for privacy genuinely about independence, or did it create space to build a private enterprise under the shield of a royal title? As Meghan expands further into commercial ventures, it reinforces the palace's justification for reassessing her standing. It becomes a cycle, each move prompting more scrutiny, gradually leading toward a potential clash. From the Sussex perspective, their decisions have often been framed as an effort to modernize the monarchy. They argue that traditions like medical sign-offs and public birth announcements are outdated and unnecessarily invasive. But within constitutional frameworks, that level of scrutiny isn't optional, it's fundamental. The idea that they never explicitly claimed to follow traditional procedures is now being put under the microscope. The argument emerging from London is straightforward. You can't selectively embrace royal privilege. You can't claim titles tied to the line of succession while rejecting the formal processes that validate those claims. In trying to balance both sides, the couple may have placed themselves in a difficult legal position. Now, the palace is simply asking for documentation to back everything up. And when those records are incomplete or unclear, the entire narrative begins to weaken. As 2026 unfolds, the Sussex story seems to be entering a he Nargis. Documentaries and memoirs have all been released. What remains now is the institutional reality. The British monarchy doesn't operate on short-term headlines. It operates with a long-term generational mindset. Morgan has remained consistent on one key point. The crown itself will endure. Individuals, whether princes, duchesses, or even kings, are ultimately secondary to the institution. If the ongoing review concludes that established rules were not properly followed, the palace is expected to respond, not out of personal conflict, but out of obligation to preserve the system. Questions surrounding the births, unclear records, and modified documents all seem to point in one direction. In attempting to reshape the monarchy's image, the Sussexes may have unintentionally altered their own place within it. So what's your take? Is this a necessary step to safeguard the monarchy's future or an overreaction from an institution resistant to change? Does the lack of transparency around Archie and Lilibet's records raise concerns for you, or is it simply a reflection of modern privacy? Share your thoughts below. The story is still evolving, and any new piece of information could shift the entire narrative. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share because this is a moment of history unfolding in real time. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.